The survival versus flourishing is I think it's a more, it's a question that's often prompted by thinking about living things and the fact that they can live and continue to exist in suboptimal conditions. So to go back to the issue of life is conditional. But what that means is not that, and in thinking about all the conditions that a living thing requires, human beings included, but much broader than human beings, it's not as though when we're to be specifying those conditions that it's the absence of that condition means immediate death. And it takes something very simple and which is, it leads to death fairly soon. If it's, for many organs, they go without water. A plant goes without water. A dog goes without water. Getting water is a condition of its existence, but it's not. That does not mean if that condition is not met in the next minute or the next hour, it goes out of existence. But there nevertheless is the perspective from which this is a condition of its existence. And when these conditions are not satisfied or not fully satisfied, you view the living thing as moving from life towards death. And the more it's able to satisfy these conditions of its existence, the more you think of it as moving towards life. So it's not a 1-0 or a binary issue in that regard. And if you think of life in those terms, then the standard, when you're thinking about life, I don't think there's anything distinctive in regard to thinking about human beings in this way. There are things distinctive, but the basic or the essential issue is the same. You look at other things, including even plants, and say it's eking by. It's having real trouble meeting the conditions of its existence. It's in a drought and it's having a hard time finding water. And you view it, and rightly view it, as its existence is more precarious. And if you're thinking of it as the standard, and if you were thinking of it of giving advice to the plant and of what's good and what's bad for it, you would say, this is bad for you. You would be better off in an environment where you were getting water regularly, versus you're in a drought and it's once in a while it's able to get. This is a threat to its existence. And from that perspective, the standard is full functioning or optimal functioning. It's fully meeting the conditions of its existence. And you can look at plant, you can look at, we have a backyard that often has animals in it. We have foxes there, and this year there's one fox that's super healthy. It looks strong. It has a full coat of fur. It seems able to hunt. And we have one that is really scrawny. It looks half dead. And that's an important perspective, that it looks half dead. It's not dead, but nor would you say is it fully meeting the conditions of its existence. And that same perspective, I think, applies certainly to all the higher forms of life, where the conditions of its existence are pretty complex. It can meet them partly or fully. And partly is always bad. That is, from the perspective of life, it's always bad. It doesn't mean it's going to die necessarily, but it's moving towards the wrong side. And this is a point that Dr. Peikoff later makes in OPAR, but it's just a point about life, that you can think of life as damage, and damage is damage. That is, it's undermining its capacity to live. But it doesn't yet mean it's dead. in terms of thinking of the standard, though, the standard is life and therefore full functioning. And I think this is why she does not make a distinction between it's flourishing, not survival, or it's thriving, not survival, because her perspective is life. And if you're thinking of it from that perspective, it's the way she formulates it, it's the terms, methods, goals, and conditions, or something like that is the formulation she used, of a human being through the whole of its lifespan. That's looking at it from the point of view of, is it meeting all the conditions of its existence? And from that perspective, you don't make a distinction between survival and flourishing. And that while the goal is really just surviving, and flourishing is all embellishment or so, it's, to put it a little differently, the perspective is optimal functioning. And suboptimal is suboptimal. It doesn't mean dead, but it means you're closer to going out of existence. That's what what you're optimizing on is its ability to live. So you don't find this, you find that it's not survival when she formulates it in the objectivist ethics by momentary physical existence. But she doesn't make a distinction between the survival versus flourishing. And what it's really about is flourishing. What it's really about for her is life, and of thinking of life from a certain perspective. But as I'm trying to stress, it's certainly not a crazy perspective, but nor is it an unusual perspective. That this is how I think one normally thinks about living things. And it's her point then, in effect, is you should also think about human beings in the same kind of way.